Why men relapse during spermatorrhea recovery and how to prevent it. Let's understand the real reasons behind this relapse and how it can be prevented. Hot and dry temperament foods and drinks can quietly restart spermatorrhea relapse. One of the most overlooked yet deeply influential reasons behind relapse during spermatorrhea recovery is continued exposure to foods, drinks, and lifestyle habits that increase internal heat, dryness, and overstimulation inside the body. During genuine recovery, the body is attempting to slowly rebuild calmness within the nervous system, cool, stable balance in the reproductive organs, natural fluid harmony required for healthy semen formation, strong internal retention control that prevents leakage. This rebuilding process is gentle and delicate. It depends on maintaining an internal environment that supports calm nourishment rather than irritation or stimulation. However, repeated exposure to hot and dry influences can quietly disturb this stability. Common contributors can include fried eggs and heavily roasted or overcooked meats, very spicy, oily, or intensely seasoned foods, excessive tea or coffee, especially on an empty stomach, frequent intake of rich broths or heavy soups in imbalance, drying or overstimulating fruits consumed excessively, smoking, recreational drugs, and alcohol use. Over time, these influences may gradually increase internal metabolic heat and irritation, dry natural reproductive fluids required for semen quality, overstimulate nervous and hormonal responses, weaken the calm stability necessary for retention strength. Because relapse in spermatorrhea rarely occurs suddenly, this disturbance usually develops slowly and silently. A person may first notice subtle returning signals such as mild inner restlessness or agitation, slight rise in nightfall frequency, renewed sensitivity or minimal leakage, fading of the deep calmness that had begun forming. These early signs are not random. They often reflect a quiet shift back toward imbalance. For this reason, controlling exposure to hot and dry dietary and lifestyle influences is not a minor or temporary suggestion. It's a core protective principle required to keep recovery stable, gradual, deep rooted, resistant to relapse over time. True long term spermatorrhea recovery, therefore, depends greatly on preserving internal calmness and moisture and avoiding repeated influences that slowly recreate the same environment in which weakness originally developed. Expecting fast healing can lead to relapse in spermatorrhea recovery. Another major reason many men relapse during spermatorrhea recovery is the expectation that healing should happen quickly or suddenly. In reality, spermatorrhea usually develops over the months or years through repeated patterns such as chronic overstimulation of the nervous system, irregular sleep and lifestyle disturbance, long term mental or physical exhaustion, gradual weakening of internal retention strength, persistent nutritional or metabolic imbalance. Because the condition forms over a long duration, true healing must also unfold gradually and progressively. Recovery is not an instant event, it's a slow biological rebuilding process that strengthens the body layer by layer over time. When someone expects immediate semen control, rapid return of strength, complete stability within days or weeks, natural impatience begins to appear. This impatience may quietly push a person toward returning to previous harmful habits too early, testing sexual strength before true readiness, abandoning discipline due to temporary fluctuations, feeling discouraged when progress seems slow. These reactions do not mean recovery is impossible. They simply reflect a misunderstanding of the natural healing timeline. True spermatoria recovery is typically quieter rather than dramatic, gradual rather than sudden, deeply internal rather than immediately visible, stable only after sufficient uninterrupted time. When this reality is understood calmly, frustration begins to disappear and patience transforms from a burden into one of the strongest biological protections against relapse. And respecting the body's natural pace of healing allows the recovery to become deeper, more stable, more reliable, long lasting over time. Understanding that slow healing is the real healing is therefore not just comforting knowledge. It's a critical safeguard that protects progress from being lost to impatience. Pornography and mental stimulation can restart spermatoria weakness. Even when physical habits such as diet, sleep, and routine begin to improve, uncontrolled mental stimulation alone can quietly restart the internal disturbance that originally contributed to spermatoria. Pornography, explicit visual content, and repetitive sexual fantasies directly affect the brain's reward and pleasure pathways, nervous system excitation levels, hormonal signaling related to arousal, sensitivity of the reproductive organs. During early recovery, the nervous and reproductive systems are in a fragile rebuilding phase. They require calmness, stability, and reduced stimulation in order to restore natural retention control, balanced arousal response, deeper hormonal rhythm, long term reproductive strength. However, repeated exposure to strong mental stimulation may gradually overactivate dopamine driven reward circuits, keep the nervous system in a state of excitation rather than repair, trigger reproductive response without true physical readiness, weaken the calm internal stability required for healing. Because this process develops silently, relapse rarely feels immediate. Instead, subtle early changes may begin appearing: rising mental restlessness or urges, difficulty in maintaining calm focus, increased nightfall frequency after a stable period, renewed sensitivity or leakage tendency, loss of the deep inner quietness that signals real recovery. This pattern shows an important biological truth. Spermatoria is not only a physical condition, it's strongly influenced by nervous system overstimulation. For this reason, leaving pornography and excessive fantasy is not merely a matter of morality or temporary discipline. It's a protective neurological strategy that allows nervous calmness to stabilize, hormonal balance to normalize, reproductive tissues to rebuild safely, long term retention strength to develop. Sustained mental calmness gradually shifts the body from stimulation to restoration, instability to control, fragility to durability. True recovery therefore requires protecting the mind as carefully as the body, because long term freedom from relapse depends greatly on freedom from repeated overstimulation. Irregular sleep can trigger relapse during spermatorrhea recovery. Sleep is the primary biological repair period for the human body. During deep, regular sleep, essential recovery processes naturally occur. Hormonal regulation and balancing, nervous system relaxation and repair, tissue rebuilding and nourishment integration, stabilization of reproductive function. Because spermatorrhea is closely connected to nervous exhaustion, hormonal imbalance, and internal weakness, consistent restorative sleep becomes the central requirement for healing. When sleep patterns become disturbed, such as sleeping very late at night, reduced total sleep duration, frequent awakenings, or light, unrefreshing sleep, prolonged screen exposure before bedtime, mental stimulation, or worry during night hours, the body cannot complete its natural repair cycle. Over time, the incomplete nightly repair may gradually lead to rising irritability or inner tension, increased nightfall frequency, mental fatigue and reduced clarity, weakened hormonal rhythm, decline in natural retention stability. This disturbance usually develops slowly and quietly, which makes the connection with sleep disturbance easy to overlook. Yet biologically, the relationship is strong. Without deep, regular sleep, full reproductive recovery cannot stabilize. Protective sleep habits that support healing include sleeping early in the night when hormonal repair is strongest, maintaining consistent sleep and wake timing daily, reducing screen light and stimulation before bed, creating a calm, quiet pre sleep routine, allowing sufficient total sleep for full restoration. When sleep becomes deep, regular, and undisturbed, the body gradually regains hormonal balance, nervous calmness, stronger internal control, resistance against relapse. In this way, consistent protective sleep acts as a silent but powerful shield, protecting spermatorrhea recovery from reversal. Because many visible improvements in recovery are actually the result of invisible healing that occurs during the night. Weak digestion can slowly bring back spermatorrhea symptoms. Stable digestion is one of the most fundamental pillars of spermatorrhea recovery because reproductive strength is not built directly. It's built gradually through long-term internal nourishment. Every stage of semen formation depends on proper digestion of food, efficient absorption of nutrients, balanced metabolic transformation inside the body, steady delivery of nourishment to deeper reproductive tissues. When digestion is calm, regular, and efficient, the body is able to rebuild internal reserves slowly and safely, supporting thicker semen quality, increased retention, and deeper stability. However, when eating patterns become disturbed, this rebuilding process can quietly weaken again. Common digestive disturbing patterns include irregular meal timing or skipping meals, overeating or eating excessively heavy portions, very spicy, oily, fried, or strongly seasoned foods, dependence on stimulants instead of real nourishment, eating late at night when digestion is naturally weaker. These habits may gradually produce incomplete digestion and internal heaviness, reduced nutrient absorption, metabolic irritation or imbalance, slow decline in reproductive nourishment. Because semen formation reflects long-term nutritional stability, digestive weakness does not cause immediate relapse. Instead, the effect develops silently over time. Subtle early warning signs may include persistent fatigue or dull heaviness in the body, reduced clarity or energy after meals, gradual thinning in semen quality, slight return of leakage tendency or sensitivity, loss of the deep internal calmness that had begun forming. This progression often feels sudden to the person, but internally it's the result of weeks or months of weakened digestion. For this reason, maintaining regular meal timing, moderate portion size, calm, balanced, non irritating foods, steady daily nutritional rhythm is not just general health advice. It's a direct protective strategy for reproductive recovery. When digestion is stable and undisturbed, the body can continue rebuilding internal nourishment, semen density and quality, retention strength, long term resistance against relapse. True spermatorrhea stability, therefore, depends greatly on protecting digestion every single day, because strong reproduction is always the reflection of strong, consistent nourishment. Testing sexual strength too early can cause spermatorrhea relapse. During the early phase of improvement, many individuals feel a natural desire to confirm whether recovery has truly happened. This often leads to behaviors such as intentional sexual stimulation to check strength, frequent erection testing or monitoring, returning to sexual activity before full stability, comparing current response with past weakness. Although this reaction is understandable, it can quietly place significant pressure on the system that is still rebuilding. At this stage of recovery, nervous system repair is still incomplete. Hormonal rhythm is still stabilizing. Reproductive tissues are still regaining strength. Long-term retention control has not fully matured. Because of this fragility, premature testing may trigger renewed sensitivity or irritation, temporary weakening of erection stability, loss of retention during stimulation, emotional disappointment, fear, or self doubt. This emotional response can then create a cycle of anxiety and repeated testing, which further disturbs nervous calmness and increase relapse risk. It's important to understand a key recovery principle. True healing does not need to be tested. It reveals itself naturally over time. Real stabilization becomes visible through sustained calmness in daily life, disappearance of leakage without effort, deeper, more restorative sleep, gradual return of natural, unforced strength, confidence that develops quietly rather than urgently. When the body is genuinely ready, sexual stability appears spontaneously and reliably, without repeated checking or force. For this reason, patience during early improvement is not passive waiting, it's an active protection strategy. Allowing the body uninterrupted time to rebuild prevents unnecessary setbacks and supports the transition from fragile improvement to durable stability, temporary control to natural strength, uncertainty to quiet confidence. The safest and most intelligent approach is therefore simple. Do not test recovery. Protect it until it becomes permanent. Because patience during this phase often determines whether the progress becomes lasting freedom or repeating relapse. Emotional stress can push the body back towards spermatorrhea. Spermatorrhea recovery is not influenced only by diet, sleep, or physical habits. It is deeply connected with the state of the nervous system, which is strongly shaped by emotional and mental pressure. When a person lives in continuous stress, worry, fear, guilt, loneliness, or internal conflict, the body remains in a persistent state of alertness rather than calm restoration. In this stressed state, stress hormones remain elevated for long periods. Deep relaxation of the nervous system doesn't occur. Hormonal repair becomes incomplete. Reproductive stability struggles to rebuild fully because spermatorrhea is closely linked to nervous exhaustion and internal instability. Ongoing mental tension can slowly recreate the same internal environment in which the condition originally developed. This usually doesn't appear suddenly. Instead, subtle early signs may begin to return. Lighter, more disturbed sleep, increased mental restlessness at night, rising sensitivity in the reproductive system, occasional nightfall reappearing after improvement, gradual weakening of calm internal control, even when diet, herbs, and routine are correct. Unresolved emotional pressure alone can quietly interrupt recovery progress. For this reason, emotional regulation is not optional during recovery. It becomes a core biological requirement for stabilization. Protective habits that support nervous calmness include slow, deep breathing that relaxes the body, reducing unnecessary worry and overthinking, limiting exposure to conflict, arguments, or mental overload, maintaining spiritual, reflective, or calming daily practices, creating quiet evening routines that prepare the mind for sleep. When emotional calmness is protected consistently, the nervous system gradually shifts from alertness to repair mode, and this shift allows deeper hormonal balance, stronger reproductive stability, improved retention control, long-term protection from relapse. True spermatorrhea recovery therefore requires not only physical discipline but emotional stability because calm mind is one of the strongest biological safeguards against relapse. Stopping discipline too early can restart spermatorrhea problems. One of the most common and dangerous relapse patterns appear after improvement has already begun. When symptoms such as semen leakage, nightfall, or weakness start decreasing, many individuals naturally feel relieved and hopeful. This improvement can create a quiet assumption. Now I am healed, discipline is no longer necessary. Because of this belief, protective habits slowly begin to fade. Dietary balance becomes less strict. Sleep timing becomes irregular again. Mental control weakens. Exposure to stimulation gradually returns. Daily routine loses structure and consistency. At first, nothing dramatic happens. The body may still feel stable for some time, but internally, deep rebuilding is still incomplete. Early symptom relief doesn't mean full structural recovery of nervous system strength, hormonal rhythm, reproductive nourishment, long-term retention stability. When discipline is removed too early, the same weaknesses that caused spermatorrhea originally can begin forming again, slowly and silently. Gradual warning signs may reappear. Mild fatigue returning, sleep becoming lighter or irregular, occasional sensitivity in the reproductive organs, subtle leakage after urination, nightfall appearing again after a stable period. Because this reversal develops quietly, many people feel confused and discouraged, thinking recovery has failed completely. In reality, recovery didn't fail. Discipline ended before stabilization completed. True recovery requires understanding a critical principle. Early improvement is only the beginning, not the finish. Permanent stability forms only when calm lifestyle discipline is continued beyond symptom relief, allowing the body enough uninterrupted time to rebuild deep internal strength. Consistency after progress is what transforms temporary relief to lasting stability, partial healing to full recovery protection, short term control to lifelong balance. For this reason, the safest path is simple and clear. Continue the same calm, protective lifestyle even when you start feeling better, because long term discipline is the bridge between improvement and permanent freedom from relapse. How to prevent spermatorrhea relapse and protect long term recovery. Relapse during spermatorrhea recovery is rarely sudden, mysterious, or without cause. In most cases, it builds quietly and gradually through small shifts that slowly disturb the delicate internal stability the body is trying to rebuild. These shifts may arise from multiple directions at the same time, including excess internal heat and dryness from diet or lifestyle, impatience with the natural pace of healing, repeated mental overstimulation or fantasy exposure, irregular or insufficient restorative sleep, weakened digestion and reduced long term nourishment, premature testing of sexual strength before stability, persistent emotional stress or inattention, stopping discipline too early after initial improvement. Individually, each factor may appear small, but together they can slowly recreate the same internal environment of instability in which spermatorrhea originally developed. Because this process unfolds silently, many people feel that relapse happens suddenly or without explanation. In reality, the body is usually signaling imbalance long before symptoms fully return. When these signals are understood calmly and early, relapse becomes neither frightening nor unpredictable. Instead, it becomes preventable through awareness and steady correction. True protection from relapse doesn't depend on a single remedy, a single habit, or a single moment of discipline. It depends on preserving the entire recovery environment that supports healing, including calm and balanced daily living, stable nourishment and digestion, deep regular sleep, emotional steadiness and mental quiet, patience with gradual biological repair, consistent long term lifestyle discipline. When this protective environment is maintained with quiet consistency, recovery begins to transform in a meaningful way. It becomes steady rather than uncertain, protected rather than fragile, deeply stable rather than temporary, long lasting rather than easily reversed. In this state, progress is no longer something that must be forced or tested. It becomes a natural continuation of internal balance. Slow, disciplined consistency therefore remains the safest and most reliable path toward lasting spermatorrhea recovery, because true healing is not created by speed or urgency, but by calm stability sustained over time. And when stability is protected long enough, recovery is no longer temporary improvement. It becomes a permanent freedom from relapse. If you would like to learn more, I have prepared a spermatorrhea free PDF guide. It explains the key symptoms, root causes, and simple natural methods to help you manage the condition effectively. You can download it free using the link in the description below.